What did you see from your team today?
You know, I think it was a really competitive match. I think we ended up hurting ourselves a little bit too much in the game with silly giveaways. And, you know, we want a little more personality in the match. Give Japan a lot of credit. Good team, competitive team. They pressed well, but we can do better.
A lot of attention, obviously, on the central defense. How did you evaluate what you saw from that position?
We'll look at the tape and we'll analyze it more carefully. I think there were some good moments, some moments that can be improved, but we'll evaluate it on tape.
What's the one thing you'd like to see most different in the game against Saudi Arabia?
I think it's more personality in the match. You know, I didn't, you know, for some reason, I didn't see a lot of personality with our performance tonight.
Thanks so much, Greg. Appreciate it.
Wow, all right. I was over here sharpening the knives, thinking we were going to have to be the ones giving the criticism. Look at Gregg Berhalter. He's calling out his players. He says he wants more personality, not just from this game, but from the next game against Saudi Arabia. What do you think of that? Fair statement from the coach?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's also a little bit on him, right? But fair statement. Yeah, he's a coach.
How so? I mean, how can you have the guys ready when you got no time to get people ready?
Because it's your job to get the guys ready. That's what you signed up for.
Okay.
It's a piss-poor performance.
Really?
There's no two ways about that. That's why you see the long face from Gregg Berhalter. But if I'm a player in that locker room and I hear no personality, more personality, shots fired, my man.
Does it bother you, or is it actually what you need to be hearing right now?
A little of both.
Because clearly
but it should bother you. And if it doesn't bother you, guess what?
You've
got no personality.
Right, right.
My father always told me, on the day,
one of those.
on the day, technically you can be off.
Right.
Tactically you can be off. Everybody has these bad days. But that personality he's talking about right there, that's the effort. That's the commitment to the cause. If that's missing,
yeah.
Wow.
And there's some stuff, I think, in this game that you figure you will not get away with at a World Cup. The first half especially, sloppy, lots of turnovers. I know we focused on the back, but I think also out of midfield. Like, Japan took advantage of the few opportunities that they had, but you all go up against better and better competition, what you're going to be seeing in a World Cup, and that's going to be very, very difficult. If the U.S. plays like that, they're not getting out of the group.
No, they're not getting out of the group if they play like that. And if you're England, if you're Wales, if you're Iran, you're salivating at the mouth of what you just saw, the performance, because they just giving you a blueprint of how you can make the U.S. men's national team cough up the ball, which is the recurring theme of this match.
But it wasn't just that they were sloppy, Herc. They weren't dangerous. Zero shots on goal.
How can you be dangerous if you're constantly giving up the ball, if you're playing from behind, if you're chasing the game? Now, this is what I will say. You said it's not just the defensive line, the midfield. Let's take Weston McKennie, for example. Usually one of the more sure players in the U.S. men's national team, a player that makes everybody else in a way better. He's contagious in that way. When you force, as a team, Japan, Aaron Long and Walker Zimmerman to be the playmakers of your team, and you saw the way that Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, Luca De La Torre, to a sense, were constantly receiving the ball back to goal.
Right.
Blind passes, having to give square passes, hopeful passes, it's coming right back down your throat. This is on Gregg Berhalter in a sense because you're trying to force this team to play in a certain way that maybe isn't conducive to certain players. Walker Zimmerman, Aaron Long can be very good center backs in a certain system. Defend first system. Don't ask them to do things that they normally don't do at Nashville. They normally don't do at the New York Red Bulls. You're trying to get them to play out the back. Japan, they will take that all day. Hey, let Walker Zimmerman play out of the back. Let Aaron Long be the creator of this game. Get the ball away from Weston McKennie. Get the ball away from Tyler Adams facing goal. Luca De La Torre facing goal. That's what you want if you're the opposition. And they played right into that.
Watching this Japan team, there were passages of play. There was some moments of real beauty, right? And I know that we think of Japan as a technical team. We don't really think of them as an elite team. For me, what was maybe the most worrying, if I'm a fan of the U.S., is it felt like there was a real technical gap between the individual players on the two teams, and then in terms of what they were able to do in conjunction while working together. Like, you saw ideas from Japan that you really didn't see from the U.S., and I always go back to this with Gregg Berhalter. That's something we always saw from him at Columbus. There were patterns of play. There was something recognizable.
This progression, this wing play, excuse me.
We'd see it, right?
You see it.
But we don't see that here, or am I missing it?
You're not missing it, and I would say more concerning than the technical ability, because I think there are players with technical ability. You have
I'm not here.
Is the speed of thought.
Okay.
And that's the most concerning thing for me, is the speed of thought, is the ability to recognize situations.
But why these guys are playing at the biggest clubs in the world?
I mean, are they the biggest players in the biggest clubs in the world?
No, but I think they're still training at that level where they're playing against the best in the world.
Let's also put things into context. This game could look very different if you have a Chris Richards on the field.
Sure.
If you have a Yunus Musah on the field.
If you have a Christian Pulisic
if you have
on
a
the
Christian
field.
Pulisic field. And you know what? If you have an Anthony Robinson on the field.
Totally.
A Jordan Pefok on the field at some facet of this game. The complexion looks very different. But you have to be worried, not just if you're Gregg Berhalter, but if you're a player who played in this game.
Sure. How much of this gets solved with Christian Pulisic's inclusion? Because we see the US 11 here, the lineup that Gregg Berhalter went with against Japan. Obviously, Christian Pulisic suffering a knock in training in the build-up to this game.
He would have played if this was a World Cup game.
Totally. Okay. Fair enough. We assume that's the truth. Would he have made a difference, though? I mean,
yeah, let me tell you
is
where
he that big of a difference to
let
this
me tell
team?
you where
I feel
players like Christian Pulisic can be a difference. When you are chasing the game, it is very easy for the opponent to dictate how that game goes. So in games where they can sit back, they can make the spaces tighter, compact, and more difficult for you, players of quality in 1v1 situations that can draw other players out or take advantage of certain tactical schemes like that are a necessity. That is where Christian Pulisic comes into play.
You know another guy who I think kind of fits that bill?
Who?
Is Gio Reyna. And you were really surprised when you saw him in the starting 11. Why?
Yeah, because I was under the assumption that they were managing minutes for Gio Reyna, and I would have assumed he would have come on in the second half. Excited to see him on and play and get minutes under his belt. I think he's going to be a vital player for the U.S. men's national team at the World Cup. And the few times that the U.S. men's national team were actually dangerous, it's off of his play. In the very first half, Sergiño Dest does very well to get that ball to Jesus Ferreira, but the guy spraying that ball, and what a ball, is Gio Reyna. He has these moments of brilliance. You need to get that more out of him. And so getting his feet wet with minutes was important.
Yeah, he played on the wing. Is that his best spot? Is that his best role?
I think you can see, even when he plays on the wing, his natural tendencies are to come centrally, and you saw that in that play. At some point in time, I think Gio Reyna is going to be an 8 for this team.
Really?
Yeah, because he's just so creative, and I think he adds just a different element. And I don't think, honestly, you can take Brendan Aronson out of this lineup.
Right, so he's got to take that spot, the other, you know,
but who do you put out? I mean,
Pulisic.
Yunus Musah has proven to be so important for Gregg Berhalter, and you saw a player of his caliber, what they were missing
So
without
I
him.
wonder if that, obviously, Christian Pulisic, huge asterisk on this result. No,
Right.
Christian Pulisic, you don't have your best player. I think what we really saw here is the gap between Musah to De La Torre. And I don't want to focus on De La Torre now, but Musah, what he brings to this team, the athleticism and the quality in midfield. As you said, the midfield didn't really play its usual part.
So the one thing, and my biggest criticism with Yunus was the end product, but don't worry about the end product if you can get it from elsewhere. If a guy like Yunus Musah can connect from point A to point C, if he can be that B player, if he can be that connection right there that advances the ball from the defensive end to the final third, which was a huge area of necessity today. A huge disaster for Gregg Berhalter was the inability to move from point A to point C.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.